Hello, everyone. My name is Edward Rashba. I'm the Director of North America Marketing at MediaMath. When in-housing is applied to programmatic, it is often done so in binary terms when it comes to media buying. We are excited to add some nuance to that discussion today. Bennett Rosenblatt is the programmatic display lead for Uber's rider business, and under his leadership, programmatic has become one of the largest and most strategic channels at Uber. Anna Gordecki-Grad is an academic turned ad tech exec. She earned her PhD in theoretical quantum physics from the Niels Bohr Institute in Copenhagen. She's held many roles at MediaMath and is now the SVP of Global Head of Professional Services and a member of our senior leadership team. She also has two very cute 7-year-old twins. Just a reminder to log into the app, find the Watson stage to ask your questions, and please join me in welcoming Anna and Bennett.
Well, hi, everyone. I hope everyone can hear us okay. Very excited to be part of the event and very excited to have Bennett join me during the session.
Yeah, excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I know it's been 3 years for you at Uber. I'm very curious to hear about what's the journey been like and how does marketing look like at Uber?
Yeah, just jumping straight into it. Uber is in many ways still a startup, and like many small startups, 3 years ago, we were still working primarily with agencies, kind of taking everything and our budgets and giving them to external partners to run mainly acquisition campaigns on our behalf. That has changed dramatically over the past 3 years. I've been at Uber for 3 years, so that's the range of my context. But we're now running most things in-house. We have an internal trading team. We run all strategy and optimization in-house, and we're even starting to work with a dedicated ad tech team in-house to build complex, sophisticated algorithms for our buying through MediaMath. So yeah, in many ways, it's been a transition of caring just about acquisition and giving everything to external partners to run on our behalf to now running acquisition, re-engagement, remarketing, and doing it with our hands on keyboard in-house.
Great, and I think, on our side, it's been such an exciting journey to basically be very flexible and modular the way we work together.
Yeah, and MediaMath has leaned in sorry to cut you off, but MediaMath has really leaned in a lot of great ways. Originally, our team was all based in San Francisco and running everything from China to India to US to Canada, acquiring new riders and drivers, and then eaters as well. But over time, we needed to first lean in on the San Francisco headquarters team, which had 3 or 4 people to run everything globally. And MediaMath actually leaned in to help us run campaigns on our behalf and really began to give us those in-house type learnings, telling us what was working, what wasn't. And that was really valuable for us. But now we've gotten to the point where we've hired dedicated teams in each mega region. So we have offices in Amsterdam, Mexico City, Singapore, San Francisco, and a couple others. And we now have dedicated teams. MediaMath also has dedicated teams in those regions to support us. So it's been a really great partnership, and I'm excited to see what the future holds for us.
Great. So, we all operate in a very complex and probably too complicated ad tech world, and it's very important to have the North Star that guides you through day-to-day short and long-term vision. What have been guiding principles for Uber in the way you think about marketing?
Yeah, I'd say that there are 3 guiding principles. The first one is transparency. So not working with black box partners. When I go to conferences and I talk to brand marketers and I learn how many people are still using black box retargeting partners, that just boggles my mind. So transparency is really important. We really need to be able to get that data at the end of the day to parse it out and understand what worked and what didn't. We need to understand those CPM trends. How do CPMs change from season to season, from day to day? I think at our scale of spend, we really deserve to get those learnings. So transparency is really key. We don't work with any non-transparent partners except for Google and Facebook, which we push to be fairly transparent, but not completely. Let's see. So that's transparency. Trusted advisory, so having partners who we feel are trusted advisors, who we feel like we could bring any problem to them and they'll help us solve it. So even though we're Uber and we have, I think now 18,000 employees worldwide, we don't really have necessarily the resources to get super deep on every piece of every campaign. So if we're launching a credit card, the Uber Visa card, or launching something with Uber Health or Uber Freight, we might need to lean in on MediaMath to give us those insights. So trusted advisory is super important, and that's honestly, I think, the most important thing, and the thing that I would say to all of you. If you're working with partners and giving them budget, you should trust them and feel that you believe in them and that they believe in you and legitimately care about your business. So transparency, trusted advisory. The third one is incrementality. So again, with black box partners, it's very hard to pull apart what part of a campaign is incremental to your business and what parts aren't. And too often, attribution models get us in trouble in the programmatic and general digital advertising space. And I've certainly seen that in my career in digital marketing. So working with partners who allow us to measure incrementality and will even help us build incrementality monitoring tools has been incredibly important. And this has been especially important as we've shifted our approach from being primarily acquisition-oriented, and I'm speaking about the rider business. Driver is still very acquisition-oriented. But rider in the US, we started to hit saturation points. And so our total addressable market is now shrunk to the point that we can't run campaigns super efficiently. So we pivoted now to running re-engagement as our number one tactic for rider in North America. And to be honest, running static banners, hitting users with 20 or 30 ads a week is just not incremental for us. And those are insights that we get by working with partners like MediaMath, who allow us to use tools like Connected ID and their incrementality lift tools.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why we've been working so well together is the fact that we care about good marketing, right? And I think good marketing starts with the customer first, right? Like, what is the experience that we are giving our customer? Are we interrupting the experience on the web or whatever channel they are using? And making sure that there is a creation of a mutual value, right? If you think about Uber customers, as well as to the brand and the ecosystem that is part of the activity. How do you think about the customer-first approach in marketing?
I'd say a customer-first approach ties very closely into what good marketing is. And good marketing for me isn't running a static banner on someone's phone that you have to X out of that just says something like tap a button, get a ride. And honestly, a lot of advertisers are still just running static JPEGs. For us, good marketing is serving creative at the right time, at the right place, to the right user with a personalized message that's going to resonate with them. So one way that we've done that is with our ad server, Celtra. They've helped us to build dynamic feeds that allow us to surface to for example, a low frequency rider in the middle of levels in Candy Crush or Words with Friends or whatever. We can surface them an interactive creative that's kind of like a lookbook of, hey, San Francisco Uber rider, here's the top 5 restaurants among Uber riders in your area. And literally you swipe through the ad to see what the top 5 are. Like number 1 is blah, blah, number 2, number 3, and on. And we actually see that users love that. Like if I got that out on my phone, I would definitely look. Like that's super interesting, and that's not data that you can easily see anywhere. So imagine if we can serve that to someone that we know loves going to restaurants, or someone that we know loves traveling. That's a really great experience, and it's kind of educational also. And I think the inspiration for that was very simple. It was on my phone, I get these notifications from Yelp whenever there's a new restaurant near me. And I always open it up, and they get me back on the platform to look at that new restaurant. If it's about these like education, like value adds, like these informational things that actually impact the end user. And so we hope as we scale re-engagement in the US and abroad that we can continue to build awesome experiences like that.
Great. And
how do you think of good marketing?
Well, good marketing is first like making sure that the customer is happy with what she or he is seeing, right? And I think the mutual value is really important. You touched on the value for the customer. I think the value for the marketer or the ecosystem is real outcomes, right? I think we are all looking at how we are evolving from proxies like clicks or just delivering impressions or viewability into really thinking about revenue, thinking about cost per acquisition, increasing the order value or additional trips. And I think the focus on that has been one of the things that I think one of the most exciting experiences that we've had together working was to think about what are the new test and learn approaches that we can take together. Like getting outside of our comfort zones of what is the KPI today, what the KPI should be, and thinking about longer term and thinking about how we can get there together.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Like the KPIs, just to be transparent with you guys, the KPIs we originally used were cost per install and cost per first trip. So we really care about if we get someone to install, that's great. But what really matters is if someone gets their butt in a seat and takes that first trip. And there's a lot of stickiness when you actually take that first trip. You're very likely to take a lot more trips. But over time, as we've matured as a business and as a marketing org, I mean, Uber is just 10 years old, almost 10 years old. Our marketing org is 3 or 4 years old. So being at such a large company with such a new marketing org has been a big learning experience for everyone. But for us, we've shifted from that cost per install, cost per first trip to now on a last click model, believe it or not, which I hate, to now a cost per incremental first trip, cost per incremental install. And that's honestly something that makes your job a lot harder as a marketer, caring about incrementality. But I think for us, it comes down to having integrity about the outcomes that you're driving in your marketing. A lot of the time, we run campaigns that just aren't incremental. And that's one of the hardest things about working at such a high growth business with a lot of organic growth is that there's a lot of pitfalls where you can just fall into running a campaign that looks really good when you look at the surface metrics, but ultimately didn't add any value. And actually, that's a big problem in mobile today. But yeah, we've pivoted very heavily towards much more sophisticated KPIs, and it's really thanks to that trusted advisor relationship that I talked about that we have with MediaMath.
You mentioned mobile. Why is mobile so important to Uber?
So for Uber, almost all of our advertising for the rider business happens in-app. And that comes down to the way that IDs appear in web and app. In-app, your ID is a device ID. In web, it's a cookie ID. For Uber, our conversions happen inside of our app. So you take a first trip, that's a device ID taking that first trip. You install the app, that's a device ID installing the app. You open the app, same thing. So if I run a campaign in mobile web or on web for desktop devices, it's really hard for me to deterministically match that impression that I served or that click that happened to the end device that took a first trip or took an incremental trip. And so right now we're still running primarily in-app, and that kind of closes off half of the entire ecosystem. And so one of the ways that we've leaned in with MediaMath is to use their connected ID solution to actually be able to open up the ecosystem. And imagine the available supply for us doubles. That means we can more efficiently parse through the inventory that's out there. So mobile is a really tough game right now. In many ways, it mirrors, I think, early desktop, where you had a lot of ad networks like AdBright and ValueClick that segmented out and siloed themselves and fragmented the ecosystem. Mobile has been like that for 6 years. And we're trying to, in partnership with people like MediaMath, shift mobile to being fully programmatic. But there still are these holdout nodes of ad networks that are holding on to pretty good SDK inventory. And so we have to have this hybrid approach where we're programmatic, but also we still have to go out and work with some of these siloed partners. And that's honestly one of the most surprising things to me is that mobile hasn't evolved yet in the way that desktop did.
So if you were to advise the audience or marketers out there on how to approach mobile, what are the steps you need to do to make it efficient, to make it work, especially if you think about incrementality?
Let me throw it back at you. How, as the head trader at MediaMath, how would you say people should run their campaigns?
Sure. I think, great, nice one. I think, for me, there should really not be a reason to look at mobile differently than any other channel. Like the tech can be different, and how do we enable our measurement could be different, right? Because you have device IDs, you have cookie IDs, you have probabilistic and deterministic approach to measurement. But I think looking, at mobile in siloed, it's not ideal solution. And I would look at it and seek the same control, the same transparency, the same measurement, including incrementality, to again focus on the business outcomes that your business wants to drive.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I think for me, there's a lot of tricks with mobile. One of the biggest issues with mobile is there's a lot of accidental clicks, just being honest. And we've run tests at Uber. Actually, our EMEA team in Amsterdam ran this amazing test where we took one of our ad server tags, and instead of allowing a click to occur on that first level of, you touch the ad and then it fires a click, we actually made it a two-step click. And when we compared the campaign, 50% running the one-step click, 50% running the two-step click, the two-step click ad had something like 97 or 98% fewer clicks, which really indicates that there's a lot of bad clicks in mobile. And again, comes back to that question of incrementality. Incrementality is extremely important in mobile, and a lot of partners out there in the ecosystem will prey on high organic growth mobile clients to just basically fire bogus clicks on as many people as they can. When you work with a partner like MediaMath, they actually have a lot of tools in place to filter out those bad clicks. And so they were a great partner for when we stopped using the ad networks and shifted over to that programmatic approach. They were the ones, again, with that trusted advisor relationship, where I felt I could trust them to put us on the right path. So mobile, there's a lot of tricksters and a lot of bad ads, and I'm sure all of you have accidentally clicked on an ad on your mobile device. But really, incrementality and working with a partner that you trust and who's transparent with you, it sounds simple, but that's really hard to find in mobile.
Yeah, I think many of you have seen this ad on mobile where it looks like it has a hair on top of the ad that everyone tries to remove from it, like amazing engagement. Yeah. Great. Maybe you touch on the test and learning agenda and being ready for some innovation. How do you guide your team to encourage the intellectual curiosity, to encourage them to test new things?
I think it's easy at somewhere like Uber, where there's a lot of partners that come at us and want to offer us cool new tests and things like that. I always suggest to my team, take as many calls as you can with as many people as you can. No matter what they're trying to sell you, you'll probably learn something by jumping on the phone with them. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of interesting insights and cool projects end up being launched just by being open and having those calls. They don't always amount to anything, but just getting that exposure and learning what's happening on the bleeding edge of the evolution of this space. By virtue of that, I think we get to grow a lot. So I would lean into all those cold calls if I were you guys. Mm-hmm. Or if you're cold calling, actually don't cold call. Don't send me all your emails now, please.
No phone number on this.
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah.
How about you?
Well, I think there is, one is not thinking in terms of line items and thinking about, impression delivery or the proxies that we have. And one, making sure that you always try new things and you focus on eliminating waste and then using that waste for the tactics or the channels that are driving performance for you. That's one. Two, working with brands and with agencies, having encouragement for the team to have the right questions, yeah. Right? And to challenge each other, right? I think the trusted advisor thing that you mentioned, and keeping each other accountable, that means that I'm expecting our clients to challenge us. And the same, I think, clients like Uber challenged we were trying to challenge, right? And if we know this specific KPI or this specific strategy will not work, or there is one that is going to work much better, I think it's very important to have that safe space to challenge each other.
I would say, like, the one thing I really love about you guys is that even when we don't have much budget to spend, you guys are all in on trying to understand what we're trying to solve. And I really appreciated that. So we have about 8 minutes.
Yes.
Should we do some questions?
I think this one we're still going to have time after. Or we
Okay,
can
cool.
go to questions.
Let's keep going.
Yes. How do you tackle the talent need to staff and source for these skills? I'm not sure. Maybe there is someone in the audience that asked that question so that we know what skills do we mean, if this is the intellectual curiosity.
So I think I know how to handle this one. So, like, for us, whenever we're hiring a new member of our team, we really care about the person having real experience running campaigns at an agency or at a DSP. I think by having that vendor side experience, you really get to see so much of the ecosystem and what actually happens versus if you just work at brands. And so for me, like, the key is finding someone who's been at a DSP or an agency for a couple of years and leaning in with them. And honestly, one of the most valuable things for people that maybe work at DSPs here is when you go from the tech side or the vendor side to the brand side, you're suddenly dealing with a complete different set of questions. And honestly, there's so much learning there that you do, where you suddenly have to think about internal politics, selling campaigns internally, sometimes butting heads with other channels, which I'm definitely guilty of. There's a lot of considerations that you never think of if you're not at a brand. And so I would say that tech experience is super important. Anyone I talk to who's like, how do I get into digital marketing? I say just work at a DSP or work at a vendor, and then find a brand that you really resonate with. So that's what I would say about talent.
Yeah, great. I think if I were to add to that one, having experience is very helpful. I think two, having that, skills that can be transferable as well. I think we have a ton of people that come with different backgrounds, but they're all passionate. They need to be client-facing and client-ready to have the conversation for internal politics, for the conversations about marketing or campaign management, for example. Right?
What do you guys do to get new members of your team? Like, what do you look for?
So we look, definitely for the skills that are, client-facing, analytical, problem-solving, and the intellectual curiosity is very important, right? And you can see it easily if someone does the research before or the way they ask questions, and I think that's a good indicator. And then, making sure that you have a presence especially for like junior talent that we want to acquire at universities, at events, and I mean we have a full marketing engineering program at MediaMath that we basically introduce talent, and these are like fresh graduates as well as people that want to change their careers to come and have a 10-week 10-week intense bootcamp program basically to get into programmatic, and many of our clients are actually using that. So
I feel like programmatic in many ways self-selects for these like intellectually curious people. That's definitely one of the things I love about working in programmatic is that it's so fast-moving, and things are changing every month, and there's a new bleeding edge being set seemingly every day. You really have to be on top of the trades and like reading all the news and going out and networking to stay on top of your game.
Right. Maybe one question I'm going to ask that we spoke about talent, and we spoke about the multiple vendors, agencies, tech companies that you work with. How do you make sure that you create a common language and that everyone is working towards the same goal? Like, is there a way you incentivize your partners? Like, how do you approach that to make sure that it doesn't get miscommunicated or not translated properly?
Do you mean like across channels or just within?
Across anyone you work with to deliver on your marketing strategy.
I think we just try to set a North Star of like, we want to run this huge brand campaign, and what we want to do is make people more aware of a new feature, like maybe a new safety feature, or we want people to become more aware that we have expanded our ride options in Boston. As long as you're navigating around this like agreed upon goal, which you set at the beginning of the campaign before things even get planned, you create this common point upon which everyone rallies. Now, that can be difficult when you have the digital marketing ecosystem being very siloed with Google not providing you transparent IDs, Facebook not providing you transparent IDs. Then you have MediaMath, who's an extremely transparent partner, and maybe a couple others who aren't transparent. It becomes very hard as like the programmatic channel to surface all this transparent data, and then you're not really getting much back to understand how you impacted things as the larger in the larger picture. So that's definitely a challenge.
Cool. Do you want to pick your next question?
So, what do we automate next? I like that one.
Yes. Yeah.
I think everyone would say that we're going to automate programmatic buying. I think that's a really big problem, though. Like, I don't think robots are ever going to completely replace traders in programmatic. And I think that's because robots are great at optimizing towards like an attribution model. Like they'll know if I drop more impressions on this placement, I'll get credit for more conversions. But it doesn't necessarily mean if I drop more impressions on this placement, I'm going to actually drive more value for Uber or drive more incrementality for Uber. So I think everyone thinks that the next step for automation is programmatic buying. But I think there's always going to be that trader in the middle, kind of gut checking things. What do you think?
I think there is, still a number of manual tasks that we all do, and that is, the ad operations and setting up your activity. It is an optimization of it, so like the trading you mentioned, reporting and so on. And I think these all should be automated to the extent that they, have a set of rules that we all agree are the right ones to deliver on the business outcomes. But then there is the component of questioning and the intellectual curiosity. Until we get to the AI and machine learning level that the machine can do it for us,
Yeah.
I don't think we're there yet. You definitely need someone that thinks about strategy and understands also the circumstances, right? And like what are the different seasonal or there's things happening that it's not like changing the seasons in the year. It's just something that's not predictable, that you do need a human aspect to make decisions. Yeah. So maybe following up on this question and about AI and machine learning,
Yeah.
How do you think about that? How important is it for Uber?
For us, we're starting to actually build models based on bidstream data to bid directly and respond directly to the exchanges, to the bid requests. And we want to start to build models where we can predict what a rider is likely to need next. So maybe we can understand, based on seeing them using Words with Friends or Candy Crush or something else, we know that they are about ready to take the train to go home. And if we can serve a value-add creative, like I was speaking about before, then that becomes a very compelling use case for AI. The really good thing about working at Uber is we have all these amazing data science and ad tech resources that we're building foundational stuff with that we hope will drive our marketing forward 10, 20 years from now. But this is kind of just starting. We've just started to really get the resources to lean in on building AI in-house and responding to the bid stream directly using tools like external callout and MediaMath's bring your own algorithm solution. So that's how we're thinking about it.
Great. There was one, more tactical question around, you mentioned the that you measure
Yeah.
cost per incremental install instead of just cost per install.
Right.
And if you could talk about it.
Yeah, I can definitely explain that. So this is super important for us, and I love this question. So cost per install is just if you run a campaign, the total installs that happen, the total spend divided by the total number of installs that occur. Cost per incremental install is a little bit different, where you take, let's say you're running a campaign and you have 50% of users you serve an Uber ad to, trying to get them to install the app. 50% of users you serve a placebo ad, and we run a lot of charity ads actually, because we do a lot of testing. You then count the number of installs that happen in the test group and in the control group, and you divide the spend from the 50% that you ran against Uber ads and you divide the spend of the 50% you ran against control ads to get the cost per install for each group. And then you basically normalize I guess you don't have to normalize in this case because it's a 50-50 split, but basically the lift you see in installs for the test group versus the control group, you might have 100 installs in the control group and 110 installs in the test group. Therefore, you have 10 incremental installs. 100 installs would have happened regardless of whether you served them an Uber ad or not. And so that really gets you down to the nitty-gritty of what were the events that were incremental and resulting from your ad spend. So hopefully that makes sense.
Great. Then, one of the questions is about your operating model and the trade-offs between working with a best-in-class agency versus in-house approach, especially for a brand that does not currently have the experience.
Yeah. So this is definitely true for us. I'm sure you guys are all aware. Like, we haven't been great in branding and like creating an amazing brand and that image externally. Even though we think we're on the right path. And so historically, we've been a performance-first org. We run cost per install campaigns, cost per first trip campaigns. But lately, we've leaned in much more heavily on brand metrics and actually running some of our first branding campaigns. So we actually, because all of the hires internally, our entire team is just performance traders. We've pivoted now to actually bring in an agency to work as an extension of our team to run brand campaigns on our behalf and kind of show us the ropes of what branding's all about. And so we have brought that agency in-house, and they've been great. We use AKQA, and them in tandem with MediaMath and our internal team, we see that as a really awesome operating model where they drive the trading. We lean in where we can on specific Uber expertise that we have. And then, our creative team leans in as well. And then MediaMath leans in as a third party to kind of grease the wheel.
Great. I can see GDPR in there. I think this is a topic I feel like we've talked about a lot a few months ago. Can you, talk about some steps that you've taken to become GDPR compliant?
Yeah, honestly, we have like a team of lawyers who have handled all the compliance, and that stuff gives me a headache, so I haven't really thought about it. I basically just check everything that I do with our GDPR team. So unfortunately, I can't speak very well to this question. What are you guys doing to be GDPR compliant?
We are GDPR compliant, and we have a team of lawyers and people that do understand the requirements. And then, one of the biggest initiatives for us to be ready for the 25th of May. That was, I think, the date. So we wanted to make sure, especially having a strong global presence, that we are ready for GDPR.
Yeah. I like this second question around small businesses. Yeah. So it's basically asking, how does a small business do the things that you're doing? Like if you don't have all the resources and you're just a one-person team. And I would say that leaning in with a DSP is probably the best thing that you can do. DSPs in many ways are like agencies. Like MediaMath has an internal team that manages campaigns and gives us advice on what to do. The only difference is that we run a lot of the campaigns ourselves now. But if you're a 1-person or a 5-person team, you could easily lean in with a DSP that's going to provide you traders to run and manage your campaigns. So that's how I would answer to that. I mean, it doesn't matter how big your business is. There are partners out there who will manage things and be that trusted advisor for you.
Yeah, I think this is the thing we discovered or identified really early on, the importance of talent and expertise. And you don't have to figure out everything by yourself, right? Yeah. And it's not just about account management, but having the specialized talent across data and measurement, across campaign management, across analytics, and even if you are managing your campaigns in-house, there is someone that can always QA it for you. They can always, share the best practices.
That's exactly what we did. It used to be me and 2 other people running programmatic globally for Uber. And we did not have enough time to manage and optimize every single campaign that we were running. So we leaned in on MediaMath, and their traders came in twice a week, explained what they were doing. We communicated with them, talked to them to get their advice on things, and very much like a small business, we were able to run those campaigns and get that support and get those external resources. So that's how I would answer that question.
So because we are talking about trading and performance, you have different strategies for lapsed riders based on the time from their last ride.
So we are just starting to get good at re-engagement. I would say that we have an internal segmentation system where we profile users based on a variety of variables of the data that they give us. And we have what's called soft churn versus hard churn. And traditionally, hard churn users are much harder to win back than soft churn. So I think when it comes to creating a great creative experience bought programmatically for those groups, you have to think a little bit differently about, hey, do I serve a promo ad to a hard churn rider? Do I tell a soft churn rider about some cool destinations they could go to get back on the platform? So it is very different approaches. I won't say that we've figured it out because we haven't, but I hope that we do soon.
And on a similar note, the second question around if you have done any work on IDing rider lapse triggers and coordinating re-engagement creative to audiences who have experienced those triggers, how and what were the results?
So a lot of people end up stopping using Uber from one bad trip experience or like a bad driver or something like that. And we don't deal with this primarily on paid. That's not our focus right now. But we do have internal teams that have created these amazing models that predict when a user has had a bad ride. And then they lean in with CRM to actually reach out and say, hey, tell us about your experience. Maybe you're offering a promo or something special or some sort of make good for that user. And we see that that's very successful. We haven't leaned in on paid yet. Again, our marketing org is like 5 years old, and we're just figuring out what does our funnel look like? What are the definitions that we're going to use for our audiences? We just brought in a DMP for the first time. So we're figuring things out pretty rapidly, but there's a lot more work to do. And these are the questions I hope we can answer in the next year or so.
Great. So with the 20 seconds left, what would you say the main takeaway from our session should be?
I think just find partners that you trust and who believe in you and believe in your business and work with them. Don't work with the partner that hits a magical KPI that you have but doesn't show you what they're doing. Work with the partner who may not have quite as good performance, but who will show you literally every single thing that they're doing and give you that thought leadership so that you can grow as a marketing org. A lot of the things that we've discovered are thanks to working with partners like MediaMath, who teach us at the end of maybe a failed or successful campaign what worked and what didn't. And those are insights that you can actually take and leverage across many channels, not just programmatic. So that would be my takeaway. What's your takeaway?
Great. I think it's a very similar one, having a trusted advisor that you keep each other accountable and work in a transparent way to improve together.
Cool.
Great. Well,
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.